Hello, hello to all of our listeners. Welcome back to another Avenue Talks. I'm your host, Tori, and today I'm joined by the self-proclaimed theater kid, Dani Bellar Pilukas. Dani, welcome to the podcast and the always sunny Breda.
My goodness, the weather is amazing today.
Exclusively today for you.
Yeah, I feel like everybody is outside today, basically like, oh my gosh, I've seen children in like short sleeves and shorts. It's not that warm.
No. The Dutchies take full
I mean, you have to.
use. Yeah.
I think this is the most beautiful day since we've been here, actually.
That's so sad to hear.
But like we've only been here since November, so we've
Exactly.
only had the winter. So yeah.
The summers in the Netherlands are great, so I hope you get to enjoy it more. And we'll get to why you're in the Netherlands, what happened there in a little bit. But first I wanted to say that, you have called yourself a theater kid. At heart, do you still see yourself that way? Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think that theater kids at heart are a unique type of person. Like they're the person who's like really is like, hey kids, I've got a barn, let's go put on a show, right? Like they're always looking for that opportunity. They're excited about what the work is. They are willing to show up. My husband has a thing where he says, if you hire a theater kid, they'll never let you down. So, and I think there's some truth to that because I think we came up working. We worked as young people. We were doing shows. People counted on us. It was very different our teenage years, and I think for a lot of people.
You're go-getters. You carry that responsibility through the whole production. Well, that's great to hear. And how has that early love for storytelling brought you to where you are today?
I think that like that love of storytelling has always been a through line for me. I started in I was a performer and I wanted to perform for people and show people. And now it helps me not only tell the story of what we're doing for production, but also the story of what the technology is and how that's growing and what we're doing with it. And so I really like storytelling with my team about what our goals are. I think it permeates everywhere.
Do you think that this is something that you also recognize yourself throughout your entire career? You called it a through line, actually.
Yeah, no, I think so. Like I started as a performer, started working at small theaters, and I started telling stories in different ways. I did school shows, and then I worked for Imagineering, and I think at Imagineering it was really about honestly telling a story, right? We had a path from the beginning of an attraction to the end, and my team programmed all the pieces and parts that fall through there, and then to eventually bring it to the storytelling of today. But again, it's not, for me, that through line is about telling the story of how we're doing it with the technology we're using.
It's actually a good point that you bring this up because actually you described your time at Walt Disney Imagineering being about strong stories backed by technology and using creative force to drive innovation. And I think actually that sentiment explains why years later you discovered virtual production. So what does this philosophy affect the first encounter with virtual production? How was that like?
Well, we were building something. It was funny. We had started building a stage in LA, and after like the first few months, I think I got frustrated and I was like, why does everything take longer than anybody thinks it's going to take? And that's when my bosses told me it was the first time they'd actually ever built a stage like this. And I was like, what? You guys are the experts. And they were the experts, but no one had done this before. So I think that was an interesting, coming from Imagineering, where to some degree we were always doing something new or we were always doing something different, but in ways like many people had done what we did before, to virtual production where it was like all of the parts of what we do are things we've done before, but the way we're bringing them together is completely unique. And I think that for me is what intrigued me, because I've always been the person who wants to figure out something new.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you bring it up because that was also one of my other questions. You've worked at Disney, Lux Machina, and Tate, and those are all very different spheres, but with a lot of overlap in technology, but also in skills. So for live entertainment, you also have the LED walls, but they're used obviously in a very different manner. So what was your experience like bridging all of these together?
I think that's one of the things. One of the things we talked about is that whenever there's a new technology, there's a new thing, it gives a space for people to enter an industry that maybe wouldn't have traditionally been in that industry. So I think virtual production coming out in the pandemic was a really strong opportunity for people to enter into a space that hadn't been there before. There, you see a lot of live event professionals that came over. There were quite a few Imagineers that came over. And I think part of that is that there's a new space. There's a new way it has to be put together. So, for example, from live events, we very much believe in the like, it has to just happen the day of, and we understand the prep and the technology to make sure that we see what we're seeing in the theater. Well, now our theater is an LED volume, and it's the same thing. We're making sure that everything's ready.
Yeah.
Imagineering is very much a creative, like, how do I take this creativity and how do I feed it with technology in order to create something? And so again, virtual production is, how do I make sure I'm feeding the creative and I'm hiding the technology? It's not about the technology, and yet it's about the story, and we make it happen. So I think all of those things fed in.
Yeah. Do you also see it as a tool? A lot of people that have come on the podcast describe virtual production more as a filmmaking tool rather than as something that you're supposed to be chasing after.
Yeah, I think definitely I'll say a tool in the toolbox. It's not everything. The number one way to not be successful with virtual production is to do a production because it has to be virtual production, right? Like require, I mean, sometimes we do that for student projects.
Yeah, exactly.
But when we see it in a true creative project where they're like, well, why are you using virtual production? Oh, we designed the whole project for virtual production. It's like, oh, that's exciting. The truth is, like, it's a tool. People would generally come to me and say, this is the story I'm trying to tell, and I think virtual production fits. Can we talk about how VP can help us tell the story? I generally say we use virtual production for one of three reasons. Either creativity, it's a fantastical story that, we can't tell any other way. It's a world not just for our audience, but also for our cast and crew. The opportunity to create the world that we're stepping into every day on set is a much stronger creative space to be in than to be surrounded by blue and green screens, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely better. Then there's budget. We very much shoot virtual production because it's less expensive. We have an easier time using spaces that would be very expensive. And then finally, there's logistics. Some spaces are just impossible. You don't want to shoot in the Vatican, but you might want to shoot a scene that's in the Vatican, right? The rainforest sounds awful. I don't want to take a whole production into the rainforest, not only because it would like destroy it, but also because now I have an image of like very, very muddy Jeeps. But we could shoot in the Amazon in virtual production in an LED space. We could always do that in green screen, but now I can do it, and it feels like we're walking into the space.
And you actually made a really good analogy as well. Or at least that's how I understood it, between theater as a live performance, but also virtual production almost as a live performance, because it's very rehearsed. There's a lot of prep that goes into it. And I know that you're someone who really cares about those early creative decisions.
Yeah, it's I've been working lately on a talk where we talk about how do you keep your virtual production budget in hand. And one of the things is making sure that the creative decisions we make early are made, and being careful about how much iteration comes later, because our cost grows with iteration. So make those creative decisions early, understand why we're using VP, make sure as you make each decision, is this feeding the creative vision?
Yeah.
Which is what we should be doing for every production ever, but sometimes we lose our way.
And now the industry has shifted. Industry shifts like virtual production often create new roles and a space for new voices. What changes have you seen since you've entered the virtual production industry?
So I definitely think we've seen new voices. There are a lot of new people coming in who come from live events and different events. I also think that virtual production has shifted in the last 5 years. When I entered in 2020, it was very new. We were still saying, have you seen The Mandalorian? Oh, you have? Okay, great. So you know the behind the scenes? Imagine a great big LED wall. And now I think we're at the point where when we say in-camera visual effects or virtual production, people know what we're talking about.
They're more versed about what it is.
But what that means is also we've gone from being a bit of a science experiment. We've gone from a little bit of like my technical team kind of holding the system together. I have a picture of an early virtual production stage where we have air conditioning units coming in with great big fans, just trying to keep our graphics cards as cool as we could. And now we've been through those stages. We know what the stages take. It's much less of a science experiment. It's much more now about what are we doing creatively with it? How can we grow it out? Another challenge, though, is a lot of people have entered the industry without experience. And so I spend a fair amount of my time bringing people back to virtual production who've had a bad experience, which is always a challenge.
That's so interesting. How do you go about doing that? Because what the Avenue project is all about is also upskilling virtual production creatives, but also bridging the games and the media industry together to discover the magic of virtual production and discover the magic of interdisciplinary collaboration through these project-oriented workshops.
And I think that that's one of the really cool things for schools to be
Yeah.
doing is that opportunity for everybody to see it. I think as we do student projects, we are fully expecting that there's challenges and we're maybe not going to know all the things. That's why we do it. We're learning. Sometimes those exact same groups, though, end up selling major productions on their stage. Frequently, they're less expensive
Yeah.
than some of the bigger spaces. And what ends up happening is, VP has risks. We are still shooting on an LED volume. We need Genlock. We need to be properly synced. We need to be aware of the angle that we're using and the product that we're using and how it interacts with the light on stage. And if we're not doing those things properly,
Yeah.
it's possible to get a bad shoot. Absolutely. And once we have a bad shoot and we have a DP who's had that challenge, talking them back into doing it again can be so hard. Like sometimes I want to offer my free advice to other groups so that I won't have to deal with a bad shoot because it's really hard once somebody's been burned. And so I do think we're also getting to that point in the industry where it's becoming a bit of like anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And therefore we're seeing not such strong product. I'm also seeing crazy strong product from people without a ton of experience.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you know when you're entering into a virtual production what your team's experience is?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's conversations. It's just talking about it, and also credits help, but really it's about conversations.
Meeting people and asking them about what their previous experiences were, where do they come from, like what background.
Yeah, and a lot of productions, like I come in as an advisor, right? So I help bridge that gap to make sure that the people, two things, to make sure before we get there that we've asked the right questions and we know what we're expecting. And then also sometimes on stage, physically pulling it together just a little bit, right? Color, especially, like we'll see
Yes.
color that we had a full expectation, we did a full pre-light, everything was what we wanted, and something tweaks. I've seen the walls tweak themselves,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Nobody touched anything, and yet somehow it's not right. And
That's
you have
exactly
to
those
have-
challenges that
yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah, you have to have that eye on stage that goes, wait, something just changed. What? Nobody touch anything. What did we touch? Now, it's not because it's a science experiment, but it is because we're pushing to the next level, and that's kind of fun.
Exactly. And something that you mentioned is
what I
that
have.
you entered the virtual production industry in 2020. That was at the peak of the first COVID wave. And so you saw the uptick of adoption of virtual production in real time. What was it like being in the heat of the moment?
I thought it was really fascinating, right? It was funny because in like 22, 23, I was talking to a friend about some of the things I'd done at Imagineering and some of the things I was doing in VP because I was talking about going out on my own. Like, can I go start my own company?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, you're such an expert at Imagineering and the things you did there and the show programming and you've done that for over a decade. And you're so new in virtual production. You've only done it for like 2 or 3 years. And like, but the funny thing was, right? The truth is I'm seen as way more of an expert in the
Absolutely.
VP space because at the time it was like, right, I've done it for 3 years and I had like, I think I had like 4 or 5 features and 2 or 3 major
You're a
episodics,
pioneer.
right? And so it was this very interesting, like, because there was so much work in such a short period of time,
Yeah.
because we were learning so fast and scaling our teams so quickly, it was like this master course of how fast can you learn this?
Yeah.
How much can you understand? We had the pitfalls, things didn't go well, so you had to learn the lesson the hard way. So yeah, I think that was a great opportunity. I've always said that we learn the most when we mess up, and we messed up a lot between 2020 and like 23 is when I really felt it started to smooth out. Of course,
Yeah.
then we hit the strikes in LA and everything shifted, but yeah.
Oh, what more can you tell us about that? Or is it, if you're open?
It's a little painful. I think that, it's just,
I can
we did
understand.
the writer strike and the
Yeah.
actor strike happened in LA and everything slowed down. And it definitely affected our industry. A lot of people couldn't hold out through. And then it was like, we'll survive till 24 and then survive to 25. And our industry is still in this weird place. There's a
Yeah.
lot of new technology coming in. And in some ways, I think there's a lot of large corporate amounts of money that are just sitting and waiting because they're not sure what any of this is going to mean.
Yeah. Like, for example, AI, Gaussian splats, they're not sure whether it's worth the investment. Is that what you're saying?
I think more AI. I think Gaussian splats are worth the investment.
For sure.
We've already seen some really strong things in that space, but I think AI is it's moving so fast that the question is like, where should we be putting our money? Should we just be holding our money? And it has definitely caused a challenge in the industry of, do we greenlight this today or do we wait a week or wait a
Exactly.
year? And what's available in a year?
Where will the technology be at that point? And I think, if I can circle back, this rapid adoption of virtual production that we saw in 2020, I think it's coming to a bit of a standstill or maybe even declining, because something that you mentioned when we were talking earlier is that the stages that you build up at Lux Machina for 3 years, some of them are actually coming down now.
Back down, yeah. What's interesting is I think that there's definitely a hype cycle, right? Everything has a hype cycle and then it starts to come down. Those stages mostly came down in 23. And I think what's interesting to me is I don't think VP went into a decline. I think the wish to film in great big volumes started to decline, right? These large created spaces, which were very much based around putting big things in LED versus what we're seeing now, which is, what can we do in a small space? How can we use it as a tool? Not all of production, just a tool.
In certain scenes.
In certain scenes, in certain spaces. What about if we just, if we have a large window, what if that's VP on the outside? So I think that a lot of the ideas are coming and we're just using them in a different way.
And do you think that it's affected how small scale versus big scale studios are operating? Because like you said, we don't need these big volumes to be filled. We're only using it in smaller settings. In that regard,
I think it's just become more bespoke because I think that it's more, we know more now. Creative knows more now. So now creative can say, this is what I think I want versus coming into a generic space and using just exactly the thing we gave them. They can come into a bespoke space for their production that works best for them.
Really adapted to their individual needs. Yeah, I understand. Well, it's actually really interesting that you mentioned that because one of your most recent projects, the season 2 of Fallout, by the way, congratulations. The reception has been phenomenal. And I'm really curious to hear about your work. You had to make a bespoke stage for Fallout 2. Can you tell us a little bit more about what was it like working as a virtual production producer on set?
Yeah, we actually didn't use a bespoke stage for Fallout 2.
Okay.
Fallout 2 filmed on the Amazon stage, which was a created volume. But what we did do is we definitely took that space and uniquely used it. For example, sometimes we took the whole ceiling out in order to add practical lighting.
Yes.
So there was a lot of working, and there's a very large set in Fallout. Like there's a significant amount of space used within the volume. So that was a really great production. It came from a creative team that does have a very strong belief in wanting the actors to be in a space that feels like the real space. So that's one of their first asks is like, sometimes we see in volumes to get the right color that it doesn't look great. I will frequently say it only matters what the camera sees.
Exactly.
Right. So sometimes we have to look at the camera to understand the thing that we're doing. The challenge is that creative team, yes, that they absolutely want the camera to look fantastic, but also they want to make sure that we are all working in a creative space that feels like what we're looking at. So so that was really strong. Plus, the VFX producer on that project, Jay Worth, is absolutely fantastic. So he's also got the ability, the eye to say, this is going to work, this isn't going to work. And then I had the advantage of coming in with a Magnopus team, and Magnopus has been with the group at Kilter Films for a while and had the opportunity to really start to shape how they talk about virtual production. So that's pretty cool.
Maybe you can fact check me on this again, but as far as I understand, the VP team actually came before the project was greenlit.
On this project, I came in after Greenlight,
Okay.
so it may have been on the first season, but yeah, I definitely came in after
Oh,
Greenlight.
tell us the timeline then, when you were called in, and how was it like working day to day? Like what were you tackling?
Sure. So I think that so my time on the project of Fallout started. We actually the VAD had already started, so some stuff had started to be built. They'd been looking for a VP producer and they hadn't been able to find one. And amusingly, I went to lunch with the gentleman running the Amazon stage, and Dan said, "I think Magnopus is looking for a VP producer." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't want anything full time. I don't want to be hired. I only want to be a freelancer." He said, "Yeah, go
This is
talk to
around the
them."
time that you started developing your own
Yeah, I
company.
had my own company, and I said, and I'm moving, and and he said, well, go talk to AJ, and AJ Scioto was at the time the director of virtual production at Magnopus. And we had one of those conversations where like it was an interview, but it didn't feel like an interview. It
Yeah.
was basically two VP bros hanging out and talking about what's what. So that was great. They decided to bring me in. So I came in while we were in the process of developing the look of the show. Different episodes were at different timelines, but we were getting ready for our first shoot.
Yeah.
So I started before we were on the volume stage. That looks like, production designers and VAD were meeting together and we're trying to hone in on exactly the thing we want to put on the volume. Then we move into the volume and we start to put things up. Then we're looking for performance. Is it working? Does it still look like what we want? Then we build our sets, great big sets. And in those great big sets, we start to do practical lighting and we go to our pre-light day. In the case of Fallout, we're using film.
Yeah.
So we
35
do,
millimeter, right?
yeah, so we do a film test and then that gets developed and we look at it and go, yes. And then we have a second film test so we can make tweaks before we get to shoot day. So, my typical day was coming in the morning, seeing where we were as far as the stage is ready, preparing for reviews. We're also reviewing future seasons or future episodes while we're in this process because we want to get the art up on the volume as soon as possible. There's things you don't see until you see it at scale.
Yeah.
Not only like artifacting and the way it works, but also just like that doesn't look right. I don't. That's not what I was looking for.
Exactly.
So we will do reviews, and then the Amazon stage, led by my friend Dan Smizek, who's an amazing VP supervisor. That team is working to make sure the stage has what they need, and that we're getting the feedback, and the show is working the way we expect. And then our DP and our gaffer will be working on getting the lighting started. So we, typical 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, until we get to, pre-light is normally a very long day for us because we want to make sure we get through everything. I had an amazing coordinator, Giselle, and Giselle did a really good job at taking all of the storyboards, and we would take those and translate them to, okay, this is what we're using on the wall at that point. These are notes we have for lighting, and she would get that into a document that we all took into production. Production shows up. This is the only time we really see first unit. So, they're working together every day doing other things. And now they've come into the volume and we sort of meld units for a couple of days. And so that's kind of great. The first AD is walking on stage for the first time and going, okay, what do we shoot first? Not really. They have an idea, they have a plan, but they're not as familiar with the technology.
Exactly.
So that's where my role fits. And Dan, as the VP supervisor, where we're kind of talking them through, this is what we can do. This is a challenge of the thing that we're looking at. So we work that day, and then that's a 12-hour day, and we're done.
Oh my God, the way you explained it, it's not like just do it and you're done. How is that? Bridging those two worlds together. You, like you said, you're basically the translator between one department and the other department.
Great. One of my favorite things to do on set is to spark curiosity about virtual production. I want every department to ask me the question.
Yeah.
I want audio to come over and say, what do I need to be worried about audio wise? Because now we've added this great big, plastic wall
reverberating everything.
Right? And so I think that's one of the things I love about VP is that it has so many opportunities and it is about curiosity at all times.
Definitely. I want to ask you about the 35 millimeter because it's such a creative choice to combine this ultra futuristic technology like the VP stage with this very traditional analog film camera, 35 millimeter. What was that experience like? And do you have your own opinion about it?
Yeah, it's a unique process. Generally we film on a digital camera, so we are concerned about gen lock to the camera, and we're making sure that the camera and the LED are scanning at the same rate. Obviously, with a film camera, we can't do that same thing. So there's a lot of testing that happens ahead of time. We had a fantastic DIT that helped us get through that. And every camera body we used on Fallout was tested before we started filming. And we set up with a locket box what is going to be the offset in order to make sure that it's in sync. So we do all that testing. And then we use our film days to make sure that what we're seeing is what we're seeing. And then, in my opinion, I do think the film helps. A film has a little bit of a grain to it.
Yeah.
And so one of your challenges in VP is the moire and the
Exactly.
way that the LED looks. And you still could see moire, but the truth is that the grain helps to sell it.
To blend the two worlds together. Yeah. I do want to ask, we mentioned this earlier, you're very on about early creative decisions, and you sound like you've done a lot of prep work for the shoot. But like you said, technology fails. Can you tell us about a day where this might have happened, where you had to act on your feet and fix?
It's interesting.
The
I
unfixable?
haven't had that many of those days. I will say we build our stages with, dual server farms. We try to have backups upon backups upon backups. And it's very, very rare for us to have a technical problem that production is aware of.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't have any technical problems. Some of the stuff we filmed on Fallout, Dan wrote a great piece that's in LinkedIn where he talked about that there were challenges with the camera tracking because they built this the penthouse set, and it's huge. And now you put that in the volume, and we're trying to track camera, and it becomes very hard because we're constantly having view lines. And so the camera tracking team worked really hard to be able to put that all together. And then it's about communication. So it's talking to the VFX on set soup, talking to the DP, telling them like, this is where we are. At one point, we just blew the frustum out and shot it, right? Because like in the end, we can replace things that are in the background. We want to make sure that what we're getting are the right colors, and we're still getting the right color and light on our performers. So there will be those kinds of challenges, but I honestly
knock on
have
wood.
not had a really rough day technically yet. I don't think that's luck. I think it's 100% preparation.
Absolutely.
I think there's a quote, I think it's like Frank Sinatra, that says, luck is being 100% ready when the opportunity presents itself. And so I think that I've always said that like it's not luck. I don't count on luck. I count on preparation. I count on professional teams. Like things have not worked, but when those things aren't working, we have a backup. We know where our next plan is. We've already, we worked together for months. So we've already opened that line of communication. We know how to talk to each other and how to make sure that, and we trust each other. Like, I don't think that you're telling me it's going to take longer. I think that you're giving me the best estimate you have, and we're doing the best that we can. The first AD for Mandalorian did an interview, and she said the only thing she wished in the early days was that the guys would tell her it really was going to take that long when it was going to take that long. She's like, because we're production, we can go do something else for an hour.
Yeah.
Like, it's possible. I think the challenges in the early days, we didn't really know how long it was going to take, right? Like it could be 5 minutes or an hour to fix problems. But I think now we have much more knowledge of our systems. We know where the backups need to be. And I have found that to be much less of a concern.
Oh, it's so crazy to hear you speak about this with so much reverence, so much experience. And it's such an honor to even have you here to talk together. And I wanted to ask, from the Fallout shoots, what is one thing that you wish that every VP professional would take away from this?
That it looks really awesome. Like I've watched it with, there was a day on set where it wasn't so much that it wasn't working a bit. We had a software issue. It wasn't a production day. It was pre-light. And we were having a problem and we couldn't get something working perfectly. And what's interesting is like it was a really stressful day. And we were like running short on time. Epic came in and actually helped us with an Unreal issue.
Yeah.
We finally fixed the problem. And it started to look really good. Then we got creative direction, and the creative direction took us in another direction. And so it was just kind of really stressful. And then the day on the set, it's a super dark set. And so it was like, I hope it looks great. And it does. So that's the Alaskan tundra, and the Alaskan tundra and Fallout, it looks incredible. Like it. So here's the other side of that, right?
Yeah.
Those super stressful days, we go home. 6 months later, the show comes out. You sit in your house with your friends, hopefully, or your family, and that scene comes on, and like I'm like pulling my phone out, going, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! Look how great it looks!"
I worked on this,
and right, and it's not just my friends, like I and my friends did this, and I know how hard it was, and I know how complicated, and I still like I'm in love with filmmaking. I love what we do.
It's
and
beautiful.
so the opportunity to see that and be like, haha, look what we did.
Are you able to pat yourself on the back and really celebrate your achievements?
I think maybe it's because I'm a woman. I don't know. There is a degree.
That's a different conversation
I
to have.
certainly am happy with my achievements, but I will be the absolute first to say there are very few things I've done as an individual achiever, right? Like I didn't write a book by myself. I didn't design a piece of software by myself, right? Everything I've done is not just a group project, but it's like 100 people working on it, right?
Yeah.
It's more than 5 of us or 10 of us or 15 of us. And I think that's because of the scale of the things I do.
Yeah.
I want to do great, big, cool things. And so what that means is that it's a great, big project. So I take a lot of pride in guiding teams.
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in the fact that I try to get things out of the way so that work can be done. Because I'm not the technical expert frequently, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm not the person who could fix it on the software. I try to make space for that person to get their job done. And I'm certainly very proud of what we've done, but I would call very little of it an individual achievement. It's really about the
collective.
team. Yeah. Like you couldn't do I worked on this Disney project, right? Like I couldn't do it by myself. There were like 3,000 people that worked on that project, and every single one of them made a difference when they showed up. And I think that's the thing is I also show up on set with that attitude. I know that all of us are there and we're all professionals and we all know what we're doing. And every single one of those people is necessary to get us where we're going. And while some departments will be more important in certain moments, all of us together are how we get there. And so I think bringing that on set also helps, especially when you're the new kids, like virtual production, we're the new department.
Yeah.
Like lighting's not exactly sure how to interact with us. And, script supervisor comes over to me and goes, "What's happening next?" And I'm like, "Oh, wow, this is a weird conversation."
Shouldn't I be asking you?
Right. But okay. So the next scene we're going to go to is this, because I know where the VP is headed.
Exactly.
So it is, I'm really grateful for the teams I work with, and and I'm really good at forgetting the things that don't go well and remembering
every
the moments.
every shoot should have you. I mean, it's really inspiring because you have a lot of trust in your team. That's why it works. I think that's why you're able to push people creatively and to get to the end goal and to the vision that you have.
And part of that is how we grow our teams. Like we have challenges where people aren't pulling to the standard that we need, and it's tough conversations. I believe it's always stronger to try and take the team we have and bring them to the level we need them to be. Replacing people is complicated and especially hard as we move through the process. But, I think there's a lot of listening and seeing the challenge that people have and figuring out how to support them to get all of us together, because it's in all of our best interest.
Yeah.
Every one of us, all we want to do at the end of the day is go home to our family and pet our dogs and eat our dinners and eventually watch this great TV show.
Yeah.
So to get us there, we all need to come forward and do our best.
Yeah, that's something that you mentioned to me earlier as well. It's VP allows us to have cleaner, tighter days so we can all just go home and be with our families.
Yeah, and it allows us to shoot in locations that make that easier, right?
Yeah.
I swear, the Amazon rainforest, at the end of that day, I'm probably not going back to an apartment with my husband, right? I'm probably going back to a cruddy hotel room. And I'm sick of living in cruddy hotel rooms, right?
Yeah.
So VP allows us, we have a better idea of our day. We know what we're doing and when we're ending. Rain doesn't affect us. We don't get, set off by weather. we really can get a much tighter day.
How does that sentiment carry on in your personal life? Because we've reached this point in the conversation. You're now in the Netherlands, moved here from LA. What inspired this big, great change for you?
Our decision to move to the Netherlands is actually like a 10-year-old decision. We came on vacation in 2017 and we're like, this seems amazing. And I don't think we had any idea how we were going to move to the Netherlands at the time, but we definitely were interested. And some of the things I wanted about moving to Europe were a bit of getting out of the LA hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
When I shoot in the UK at like, if we're going to go over our time, an AD walks around and makes sure that everybody's good to continue. This does not happen in LA. In LA, it's just like, hey, we're going into meal penalty, right? Or, oh, yep, it's a 14-hour day. I will say specifically, I'm going to call out Kilter Films and how awesome they are. We don't do days over 12 hours. Like, that is amazing. ADs and producers and directors who keep us at 12 hours.
Bravo.
Absolutely incredible. But even at that, it's a standard 12-hour day. That's when I shot in LA, it was standard 10s or in London. And the truth is, we still got the same amount of footage. It still worked. We still kept the same schedules. So yeah, part of why I wanted to move to Europe was to make that adjustment. So it was a life change, right? I want a slightly slower pace. I've noticed that the Netherlands is different in the way people respond to things,
definitely.
right? Like I've had to get over the fact that if I send someone a text, it might take them a while to get back to me. And now I'm doing it. My husband was like, didn't they text you yesterday? I was like, yeah, but it was like 6:00. So like I answered them this morning.
Yeah, it's past 5. I'm
fine.
not on the clock.
I'm eating dinner, right? Like
at 6:30. Absolutely. Very Dutch of you.
Focusing on dinner. Ugh. And so it's a different lifestyle. And that's kind of what we wanted. I also know as I get older, like this is kind of where I want to have more space in my life. So I think one thing that's being talked about a lot of women of a certain age is how do I take control of my own career so that I'm the one who's making the calls. One of the benefits of moving to the Netherlands is it's less expensive than LA. So great. So that means I have more flexibility of my choice. And I'm more unique here. There aren't a lot of people doing what I'm doing.
That's definitely true, yeah.
Right? So that gives me more opportunity to do different things. There's some fantastic virtual production stages here in the Netherlands, and they're doing great work. And so the opportunity to work with them, but in an environment that's just a little bit easier and a little bit nicer. And then I will probably still go back to LA to shoot, but I feel like the next time I go back to LA, I'm instantly going to be like,
too much.
It's so much.
Immediately overwhelmed. But what do you say to people who actually come to you and they're like, I want that. I want those 16-hour days on set, no breaks. I just go home to sleep and then I'm back on set at 6 a.m. Because that is really idolized, I think, in the filmmaking industry, the Hollywood dream. But here you are.
One of the things we're trying to do is unlearn that, right?
Yeah.
Part of the reason people want 16-hour days is the financial aspect of it, right? That's how we afford to live in LA, is we are always working in overtime. But that we don't have to do 16-hour days to do that. We need to raise what we're paying people, not just the top and above the line, but what are we paying our PAs?
Absolutely.
How do they make enough money that they can actually have lives? And it's not their Starbucks coffee that's taking them under, trust me. They're going under because we don't pay enough. And so there is a time in your life where the hustle is fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging against that. I had the same thing. I hustled the heck out of my 20s and it was fantastic. And I basically lived my job, and every single friend I had was somebody I saw on set every day, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the reality of life for a while. But it also closes barriers to people who can't do that.
Exactly.
Right. And those barriers, I think, leave out a lot of important voices. We lose the voices of younger people, of people from unrepresented communities.
Definitely. Differently abled people as well.
Differently abled people, right? Or people who have children,
Yeah.
right? Who they can't just work a 16-hour day. Heaven forbid their spouse not be 100% available.
Yeah.
Frequently, it means we lose women in the industry,
Exactly.
right? The simple reality is that for a lot of women, in order to have children, you can't do this. But now I'm meeting women who are doing it. And I think part of that is being part of a social system that the Netherlands offers where things are supported. Plus, it's being part of a social system where it's acceptable that dad picks up the kids if that's necessary. You know, we get a little bit out of our belief that like only mom knows what your kid's doctor is and how to take them. Like we got to pull back from that a little bit.
Sure.
And I don't have kids, so I certainly can't speak to people who have children and all of the challenges that come. But I know I want more voices in the space. And to get more voices in the space, we have to make it more accessible. Hours are a big part of making accessibility.
And thank you for advocating for that. Actually, something that stood out to me, something that you said, it's important for little girls to watch the BTS of Mandalorian and see it's not all white guys. The hustle culture and the constant comparison on social media, as well as I think a huge pressure for young creatives and for girls, and also the fact that it's a male-dominated industry. What advice do you have for those little girls that dream to be on set one day?
It's funny. I always have simple advice, but I think that we're in a moment in the industry where it's hard to have that advice. It's hard to get jobs right now.
Yeah.
It's scary. People who've been doing this for decades are finding something new. So it's hard. What's changed, however, is I think that there's a lot more individual creation available. I think VP opens this up to people. I mean, I definitely saw a guy with a 60-inch TV on a great big boob that did a turnaround shot.
Yeah.
Because he had this huge circular thing with the camera on one side and the TV on the other, right? I was just talking to someone about the fact that what we all had to go to school for, you can learn on YouTube now, right?
Exactly.
You can spend time learning.
Much more accessible.
So I think in some ways, a lot of the ways we're going to open up spaces, we're going to open them up ourselves. We're going to learn something new. We're going to do something new ourselves, and we're going to open that space up. And then I personally believe like sometimes you have to say yes, and you have to say yes when you're a little bit scared, and you have to say yes when you're not sure that you're the right person for the job, and you're not sure you're fully qualified, and you just go, sure, and you figure it out. Because that is the difference frequently between women and men is women want to be 100% qualified before they do the job. And if you're not sure, you can communicate that. You can say, I'm really excited about this part and man, I have that. But these are some things that I'm going to learn in this project and I need some support in that. It's okay. You can talk about that. And so I think that my advice is get out there on your own, learn as much as you can. Be cautious of this industry right now because it is financially very complicated. And then say yes to the opportunities that come. Know your worth, know what you can do, and also know where your gaps are and ask and talk to people about how they can help fill that.
Yeah. Make that first leap, be that first person.
Yeah. I mean, the number of things I've said yes to, and some of them worked out and some of them didn't. Some of them I was like, nope, this is not the thing that I want. Looking back, none of them held me back in my career.
Yeah.
Each of them moved me forward, and my career path is definitely a long and winding road through a lot of different things that then somehow end up feeding into everything.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there are a lot of straight lines left anymore. When I came up in production, it was like, okay, well, you're a PA, and then you become an AD, and then you become a UPM or a production manager, and then a UPM, and then you can be a producer. And it was like, right, but what if I can't afford to be a PA for, 600 and something days?
Yeah.
That's insane. That's like 3 or 4 years of living below poverty wages.
Yeah.
That's a lot that we're asking of people in order to come into this industry. So I think I'm really excited about the fact that now there's so much, and that's true in every department, right? Yeah. Assistant cameras, awesome. They frequently start out as a PA. They become an assistant camera. They're still not making any money. Eventually they become a loader. You go up in the chain. And we frequently, until you're 3 or 4 steps up in the chain, you're not making any money.
Yeah.
And everybody just says to you, yeah, but we all did it. So you just have to do it. I don't think that's true anymore. I think there's a generation coming that's going, but why did we all do it?
Yeah, we don't need to accept that anymore.
We don't. Now, will every job pay as much as you'd like it to pay? No. I'm here
Not
to tell
1 million euros an hour?
Dani Bellar Pilukas is here to tell you that if you want to just make money, stock markets are highly recommended. Theater production are not generally ways to make a fortune.
No,
unless it's your own project, right? And then maybe your own project, you could always be Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and have a Goodwill Hunting. I wish you the best of luck. So I'm not saying like hold out because you deserve to be paid a fortune, or hold out and you're still going to do things for less money than you would like to make them.
Absolutely.
But know why you're doing it. Know that that's going to the next step.
Do you think that this is exactly that mindset that inspired you to start your own company, taking charge of your own career and making your own opportunities, having the possibility to say no when you want to say no?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, again, back to those women of a certain age,
Yeah.
we definitely were raised in that industry. And I came up in like automation and moving things. So I was definitely the only girl in the space, right? And I'm very cautious about girls are under the age of 18. I was a woman, but I was a girl in a lot of ways, especially the way I was viewed. And it was hard, and I worked very hard, and I worked to get the skills I have. And yet sometimes I still felt like I was the girl. And by taking control of my own career, it gives me the opportunity to step into projects that I'm truly inspired by. I can go and pitch things to people because I know I'm pitching me, right?
Exactly.
I had a friend when I started freelancing who said, when you're a freelancer, you don't want someone to hire you because they need just a producer or just a production manager or just an automation operator or the million things that I do. You want them to hire you because they want Dani.
Yeah.
And all of the extra things that you offer. So as a freelancer, it's important to, I bring joy to the set. I bring and cookies sometimes, but I bring an eye for challenges we're going to face that's different than other people. It's not always my department, but I'm always looking for I bring a spirit of collaboration. I bring a lot of things beyond my job title in order to get us to a final product that's incredible.
Before we say a final goodbye, this feels like a good moment to wrap up. What are you most excited about in the coming years? Like a future project or maybe the future of VP? What are you looking forward to?
Oh man, I'm looking forward to figuring out how this Netherlands life works, and how I start to, what I really want to do in the Netherlands is I want to teach. I want to talk to young students. I want to bring more people into the space because I think that each person brings in a new perspective, and that perspective expands what we can do. And I'm looking for those people who come to me and go, have you thought about doing whatever it is?
Yeah.
I just wrote a blog post on LinkedIn, check out my LinkedIn, about impossible. And I worked for a company for a long time that would say, we make the impossible possible, which if it's impossible, then it's impossible. That's not true, right?
Yeah.
But I do think what they do is we look at challenges that are impossible and we figure out how to bring everybody together and go, no, deep down, I think I can do this. It's hard and it's further than we've gone, but it's possible. And so that's kind of what I love about teaching and about working with new groups is when we kind of all look at each other and go, it's hard and it's complicated. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
It's possible. Let's go figure out how to do it.
I love that. I really appreciate that you're someone who is the change you want to see in the industry. And I think that you're really making this happen. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. You can actually catch Dani at the Virtual Production Gatherings Industry Day on the 15th of April. It's happening right here at the Breda University of Applied Sciences in Breda, the Netherlands. And as a leader of the craft, Dani will be talking about proactively addressing issues in VP shoots. So VP projects are most often derailed by late decisions, unclear ownership, and creative explorations that aren't aligned with the project's timeline or technical needs. And your session will outline the full VP life scale from idea to production, and will offer a framework to reduce the risks and get you to the vision that you're aiming for. So if that sounds like something that you want to see, then go over to vpgathering.com and snatch your tickets today because they're going fast. The event is only in a few weeks, so make sure to make full use of this opportunity. And if you want to see more of Dani, make sure that you follow her on her LinkedIn and also check out her website, bellarpilukas.com. Where else can the people find you? Where do you want to send them to?
I think LinkedIn is the perfect place. I think LinkedIn is a great place for conversations.
Awesome. If you ever want to chat with Dani, head on over there. Again, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I can't wait to chat more with you later. And also a big thanks to all of our viewers and listeners for tuning in to another Avenue Talks. We really appreciate all the support, and you can check out the rest of our episodes on our LinkedIn page at Avenue Cov, and follow us to stay updated on all of the on-site workshops, webinars, and much more that we have to offer. Have a lovely week, and this is goodbye from us.